Well, good morning, Patriots, Americans. How you doing? We're here in New York. We are in day 12 of the strike with the New York State correction officers, as well as I believe just the correction officers, because they have other police agencies as well. Usually the college campus police, but I don't think they're striking because their working conditions are just fine. However, this could be the last day of the strike, as last night the union and Department of Corrections in New York State came to what we call a tentative non-binding agreement. Now, what I mean by that, mediation is non-binding. It's just a mediator says, okay, after what I've heard from both sides, this is what I propose. So, being that the union didn't sanction this strike, and it's what we call a wildcat strike, because the employees said, the hell with the state and hell with the union, we're going to do this whether you like it or not. All right, now one thing they agreed on. Today is February 28th. Tonight is what they start the Ramadan season for a month long. So it means tomorrow, on Saturday, March 1st, this agreement goes into effect if they choose on the first day of Ramadan. This is not a coincidence. They didn't want a headache with the Muslims. If the employees are willing to return to work, they will not face any disciplinary action, what we call NOD, notice of discipline. They're saying that the halt-related programming would be suspended from 90 days from the date of the agreement, which is tomorrow. So, March, April, May. So by June 1st, the agreement would end. Now, I can tell you, back in 79, when they last struck, they didn't get any NODs for striking. But what the state did do under the tail law was penalize them 2 days pay for every day they'd strike. So being that we're on day 12, that's 24 days of money they're going to lose, because there's no way the state ain't going to collect that money. I'm telling you right now. I'd be surprised if they conceded to that. So that's that's 3.5 weeks of money right there. Now, would it be done in a lump sum? No, they would just take some of it out of each paycheck. The National Guard will continue to be used to stabilize the facility as staffing begin to increase, while employees return work and used to help prevent excessive overtime. So once again, we're going to still use the NG, something they're not trained to do, to help stabilize the jail, even though it hasn't worked. Now, when staffing levels go below a certain threshold, halt-related programming will cease to operate. Again, this is all temporary. Officers will continue to work no longer time and a half for overtime, but double time and a half overtime for a month. Only a month. Now, they've done this before. Years ago, about 3 years ago, when we were having staffing problems, they gave nurses and medical staff and other civilian staff 2.5 times overtime, because they're just a lot smaller group. When they experimented for a month with the officers, it killed the state financially. But I tell you what, a lot of people were willing to come in to work overtime, to the point where all the comp kings and comp queens came back for the month. And once the 2.5 time overtime went, the comp kings and queens miraculously all got hurt at the same time and left. Which brings me to another thing. The state has to crack down on these useless employees. Anyone who's ever worked for the state or New York City knows that workman's comp is always being frauded by employees, and they do nothing to crack down on it. Until the state does something about that and starts getting rid of some of these people, this problem will continue. Now, if a CO, correction officer, volunteers and works 4 shifts of overtime in a 2-week period, which is 32 hours, they will not be mandated to work an additional shift for that pay period. If an employee who works the required 2 voluntary overtime shifts per week and then mandated for additional shift that same week, such a shift will be credited to the following week. All right, I see what they're doing here. They're just playing around with numbers. But hey, listen, it may reduce the stress on the employees. If they are mandated to work overtime, the 2 voluntary shifts in a week, the employee shall pay a $750 penalty to the employee for violating the overtime policy. Oh boy. Weekend voluntary overtime differential. Any CO or sergeant who volunteers and works overtime on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday will receive pay differential of $100 per shift worked on such a day. So monetarily, they're taking care of them, but it still ignores the much bigger problem. All right, changes to the legal mail system, because this is where a lot of contraband comes in, and mail in general. The completion of analysis of the unions in the civil service upgrade application for COs and sergeants. And a referral bonus program. If you refer someone to take the job, they take it, you get compensated. Okay, so what they're trying to do here is, right now, COs in the state of New York are what we call a grade 14. Sergeants are a grade 17. They're going to look at considering this could be only done by legislative. So both the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate have to agree on this, and it has to be signed by the governor. And being the Democrats own 03, I am not holding my breath, but we'll see. Of a single grade pay grade. In other words, making COs go from grade 14 to 15, or 14 to 16, or 14 to 17, and the sergeant would go from 17 to 18, 19 to 20, depending on what they do. The only problem is if they bump the sergeants up too much, they're going to be making as much as lieutenants, and that ain't going to make the lieutenants happy whatsoever. But again, that has to be done by legislation. The most important thing is the overturn of the Holt Act, and there's nothing on here about that. Just suspension of Holt programs. Hochul and the New York State governor already said, we're not overturning Holt, which tells you what this government thinks about its employees and about its law enforcement officers. So, tomorrow's a big day. We'll see what happens. I know there's a lot of dissension about employees who have worked and crossed the picket line, and between the ones who are striking. Because everything I just told you is pretty much temporary for 90 days. By June 1st, you have the same problems all over again. And what happens then? And with Hochul facing a healthcare problem, a $9 billion shortfall in the healthcare system here, and I'll talk about that story later on. And with people constantly leaving New York State, once again, the left have not figured out that the laws of economics apply to them. When you're losing money, what do? What do car dealers do when they can't sell cars? They give low financing rebates. You go to a supermarket, they lower prices. ShopRite around here has a famous can sale. Airlines lower prices. But when it comes to government, especially with the left, they raise prices. Oh, well, you people got to pick up the slack since they left the state now. So you're going to force more people to leave the state. After Hochul, Mayor Adams, and Cuomo have admitted that their policies have forced a lot of rich people to leave the state. But this is what they continue to do, hence the congestion pricing. Comments down below. What's your opinion? Like to know. Keep the country in prayer. Keep New York State in prayer. Keep our law enforcement, National Guardsmen in prayer. We'll talk to you later.